Hello guys, welcome in, welcome in. How are you today? So, I think it was just yesterday. I discovered that I don't know if it was Game Informer that put it out. I'm not even sure. I don't even know what channel it was. It popped up on my feed. Yeah, Game Informer. Okay. Game Informer posted to their YouTube channel a video of the devs talking about Veilguard. And I wanted us to check it out together. Now, I've seen some of the articles and I've seen mostly a lot of negativity around some of the articles that have come out recently that the Game Informer has posted. And then apparently PC Gamer, there was a person who wrote an article basically trashing Veilguard and Bioware as a whole. But we're not gonna really focus on that. We're gonna watch the video from Game Informer and hear from the devs themselves. So, I don't know how much you guys have heard. I don't know how much you guys have been paying attention because I think, like me, a lot of people that are really excited for Veilguard are kind of trying to avoid all of the negativity. I know I have been really trying to go out of my way, but being a content creator, I kind of can't avoid some of it. It just pops up in my feeds, in my various different feeds, regardless of whether I want it to or not. It's the downside of being a content creator, I think. So, Game Informer wrote an article. I don't know when it come out because I've been trying to avoid the articles because some of the articles have been a little spoilery in my opinion, so I've been trying to avoid them. But again, you can't totally avoid it because people are talking about it and they're talking about it in a very negative way. Not everyone, but a lot of people. And one of the things that have been talked about negatively is the article that came out was talking about the devs are trashing the older Dragon Age games. They're building the new game up too much, talking about the companions too much. And they apparently don't like the older Dragon Age games. So, hearing from the devs themselves, hearing them speak themselves about not just Vanguard, but the other Dragon Age games. And I feel like this will help put some things into perspective. Now, let's just put this out there. It does not matter what Game Informer does. It does not matter what Bioware does. There are unfortunately going to be a lot of people out there that don't care. They're just going to take what they see, they're going to take what they hear, and they're going to twist it in their own brains, and they're going to turn it into a negative because everyone has a different perspective on things. But I think that people who are wanting to see this game succeed and they are wanting to see Bioware succeed, like us, everyone in chat and myself, we want to see this game succeed. We want to see Bioware come back. I want to keep an open mind about everything. In avoiding some of the things and in seeing a lot of the negativity, like when I first saw it too, written in form, in the interview form in the article, because people were posting it, I kind of thought, it does, I can see why people are thinking this. Like, I can see why people are thinking that the devs didn't like the earlier companions. But then I was like, you know what? I feel like I just want to hold my judgment on this because it's really, like, as a creator myself, like, I don't know if you guys know, but I'm a writer. I don't write very often because I criticize. I'm my own worst enemy and I'm my own biggest critic and I criticize my shit and then I don't. I am a writer, not to mention when I make my videos and stuff like that, like, we're going to be critical of our work. That's what artists are. Any creative person is critical of their own work. And I don't think it has to do with them not liking the characters and the companions from before. I think that they're just finally coming back to saying, this is what we're good at. And this is what we focused on with the Veilguard, right? So, like, I thought we could watch the video, we could hear the devs, we could hear their tone of voice. I mean, in the very beginning of the video, I believe that's Corinne Bush talking and her excitement, talking about the games. It doesn't sound like they hate the earlier games. So, I just thought this would be a really cool thing for us to watch together. And then we can talk about it, because there are valid criticisms to have. Hell, I have a couple of concerns about Veilguard, but none of those concerns are going to stop me from buying the game. None of those concerns are going to stop me from playing the game. I think that we are all critical of the games we love. We have our criticisms, we have our concerns. I mean, how many of us have played our Dragon Age games and our Mass Effect games, and we'll, like, during our gameplay when we're streaming, we'll start talking about fan theories. We'll start asking questions about, okay, this looks like a plot hole, right? Or, you know, why did this character do this and not this, right? So we're going to have our criticisms. But again, there's a difference between having a criticism and just plain straight out hating something just to hate something. Because this person is angry for whatever reason, you know, like it's coming out, and it came out during Dragon Age Inquisition too, that a lot of the OG players, I'm one of the OG players, by the way, and I do not fall into this category. And it really does irritate me that every time an OG player comes out and says something, they talk as if they're talking for the entire community of OG players, and no, you're not. I hate to burst your bubble, but you're not. And not all of us are a monolith. We don't all think the same thing. We all have different opinions. And it really does piss me off that they act as if they're speaking for the entire community when they're not. So yeah, I'm going to start this over so we can all watch it together. I think that I saw the first, like, 30 seconds of it with Corinne Bush. I believe that's Corinne Bush talking. I don't think they put the names up of the devs. And I sensed her excitement when because she starts talking about the Dragon Age series as a whole. And that made me excited. And I just think that hearing their voices and hearing them actually talk with the tone in their voices and the excitement and everything, I just think that makes a huge difference. So yeah, let's watch this together. We're going to start this over.
I remember when Dragon Age Origins came out, playing that game, day one purchase. I love RPGs.
Talking about Dragon Age Origins.
Anything like it. To be honest, it kind of blew my mind. It really felt like a step forward for the genre. And I fell in love with the characters. I fell in love with the presentation, had all the strategy I was looking for. I was in awe of that game. And to sit here now, working on the next edition of Dragon Age, it's a dream come true.
I owe my career to Dragon Age.
I love that game.
I've grown as a game developer with it, and I'm so excited to finally be able to talk about Veilguard, especially.
This is really the best Dragon Age game that I've ever played. I obviously carry some bias because I'm coming into it partially from the outside, but
yeah, see, he says this is the best Dragon Age game in his opinion, and he does say that he's being biased. I don't think that by him saying that this is the best one yet is him putting down the previous games, but I can see how someone who's already being critical might see it that way. How someone who loves one of the previous games, probably Dragon Age Origins, because a lot of this is coming from the Origins fans, can see that as an insult. I can see that. I could see how they would see that as an insult, but I personally am not taking it that way. So I think that each game has its own flaws. Each game has its own, for me, the memories. Like when I open up Dragon Age Origins and the music plays, it's like when you open up Mass Effect 1. It's the same thing. It's like, oh my god, the nostalgia, the memories, the love, right? That you immediately feel when you open up the game and there's the music. Dragon Age 2 for me is, yeah, the charm. the charm. Each game has just specific memories. Like when Dragon Age Origins came out, my youngest was, I think he was he was a preschooler because it was in 2009, right? He was born in 2006. Yeah, he was in preschool at the time. And I remember playing it, and I remember showing him like the different things. He wasn't all that interested. He's never been into fantasy. He's never really been into fantasy. Sci-fi he's good with, but fantasy not so much. And then and I have specific memories like that with the Mass Effect series. When Dragon Age Inquisition came out, I have very specific memories with Dragon Age Inquisition. And yeah, it's just the way it is. DA2 has so much charm in it, so much fun stuff. And I think the problem is a lot of people are like, no, it should have stuck with the Dragon Age Origins. So in their mind, Dragon Age Origins set the precedent of what their expectations are supposed to be for the Dragon Age series as a whole. Dark fantasy, okay? And when they mean, but what I think they mean by dark fantasy is not just the story, but the aesthetics, right? So because Dragon Age 2, it aesthetically was brighter, but also the humor. It's not supposed to be that funny. Well, when you think about it, Zevran was pretty funny. And Zevran's story is pretty freaking dark. His story is dark. And yet he seems to keep a sense of humor about himself, right? Alistair is a bit of a comic relief. And his story, like he loses Duncan and he is named king against his will, kind of. And like his whole backstory. And then there's Liliana, who manages to look on the brighter side of things despite, all the crap that she went through. So it's not like humor wasn't there. It was there. But I think because the world was aesthetically darker, that's what people are setting their expectations on. Also, the Broodmother, right? Well, here's my thought on that. You have established how Broodmothers are made in Dragon Age Origins, right? And Awakening. Why do you need that to still be established in the next 2 games? We've already established it. It's already a part of the lore. We already know. We've seen it. Right? Well, we haven't seen it, but we've we've heard about it through the rhyme. That's been, the rhyme that nobody will ever forget. What was the other thing? Oh, the Desire Demon. Now, I do understand why people are like, why do we no longer have the Desire Demon? I do get that. We lost the Desire Demon, but we gained the Pride Demon. I do kind of feel like we should have both, because Desire and Pride, they're different. So why don't they both exist? But I don't know that they don't exist. I just think that the stories themselves just took us in a different direction. But I don't think that that's a basis for me to not play the other games because the Desire Demon isn't there. All right, well, let's continue watching.
But yeah, this is the best one. This is the one where we get back to our roots of character-driven storytelling and compromises.
Every game has heart and soul that goes into it.
Exactly.
But this is something different.
Exactly.
This is something more.
So this is something more. Okay.
I'm John Epler. I am the
John
creative
Epler,
director
okay.
for Dragon Age Veilguard. Been at Bioware for coming up on 17 years this year. I pull together the story, the vision, the kind of creative intent of not just the game, but how it relates to Dragon Age as a whole, the storytelling we're doing, and all that sort of thing.
My name's Corinne Bush. I'm
I
the game
thought
director
so.
on Dragon Age the Veilguard. I joined Bioware just shortly after Anthem had launched, and fortunately the opportunity came along to join my dream franchise, Dragon Age.
I'm Mark Dara. I am the former executive producer for the Dragon Age franchise. I was executive producer on Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and Dragon Age Inquisition.
One of the things we wanted to make sure with Veilguard is that it's respectful and referential to previous games without feeling like you needed to have played Inquisition or DA2 or DAO to understand.
Okay, so they're trying to be respectful of the former games. So how in being respectful to the former games are they hating on the former games, right? I think that no matter what they say or how they say it, there's a certain sect of people that are just determined to twist everything that they hear to spin their own narrative in their own heads, and they're determined to hate on this game. That is very unfortunate because I am worried. This has been my concern since the trailer dropped and all the hate came out from the trailer. Much like Mass Effect Andromeda, I don't know if you guys remember, but when Mass Effect Andromeda launched, yes, Mass Effect Andromeda had a lot of flaws and a lot of bugs. But what I saw, and you guys know Mass Effect Andromeda is it's not my favorite, right? It's my least. But I still played the game. Like, again, it was like not something that was going to make me not play the game, right? But what I saw happen after, like within the first, day or two, the level of hate that Bioware got because of the bugs in the game, it got so much hate. I am very worried that the game hasn't even been released yet. And people are hating on it so much. I am worried that the same thing is going to happen to the Veilguard. I mean, and we'll to be fair to the entire situation, we know that Bioware had a hard time with Andromeda as well as with Anthem. So we do know that. But I remember that. I remember how much hate they got because of the bugs. But they got so much hate that EA was just like ready to throw Andromeda away. And that was a hard thing to see. That was a really hard thing to see. And that is my worry for the Veilguard. But I want to know what you guys think about that, because that's my biggest worry right now, because the game's not even out yet and it's getting way too much negativity and way too much hate.
Well, there are references, there are moments that we have callbacks. It really is its own story, its own continuation with a different cast, with different characters. Historically, Dragon Age has always had a different cast per game, so that gives us a lot of freedom in terms of what we want to lean on in the past and what we want to really bring in that's new and forward facing.
The thing that happened in 2023 that I love is that it blew the doors open in terms of what a storytelling RPG could be, where you had
what happened in 2023?
You had Zelda and you had all of these games
come
out in the same year and say, this is a storytelling RPG. They're very different from each other. You can like some of these, you can like all of these, but the genre can be bigger. We're learning on each other, we're building foundations that we can build upon. So I think there are going to be a lot of people who picked up their first RPG last year that are going to be looking to pick up something new and could really find something to love in Dragon Age the Veilguard.
Hey, Chuckles. Hope I'm not interrupting.
I gotta say, the Solus looks really great. He looks great. He looks a little more worn, you know?
Let's buy him some time.
I would imagine 10 years.
Now, I want to be
Could
clear,
be.
I adore Solus. I'm a solo Velen player, but this is not a game about Solus. So, in all things we do, trying to capture that authentic experience, we felt the title really needed to change.
Dreadwolf suggests a title focused on a specific individual, whereas Veilguard, much like Inquisition, focuses more on the team, focuses more on the group, focuses more on the party than it does on one specific person.
The absolute beating heart of this game are these authentic, diverse companions. And when we took a step back, as we always do, we always check our decisions and make sure that they still represent the game we're trying to build. It just felt like we needed a title that represented what this game was truly about.
I think it
Okay, so I will admit I was definitely disappointed in the name change. I was not prepared for that. I was not ready for it. That took some getting used to. I still think they need to drop the to keep with tradition, right? Because, you know, each game or whatever, minus Dragon Age 2. But, like, again, it's not a make or break for me. I'm still going to play the game. I don't care what the title is. At the end of the day, I don't really care what the title is. I'm still playing the game. So, yeah, it took me aback a little bit. It definitely disappointed me, and it took me a little bit to, like, really get used to it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So,
was absolutely the right choice. Games can take on a momentum. Arguably, this game has kind of, in a way, been called Dreadwolf since its earlier days. And as the game evolved, as the game figured out exactly what it was, it's very mature to step back and say, we called it something, does it really still reflect what the game is? And I think the fact that the team was willing to take that step is amazing, and I think this is absolutely the right decision.
I mean, what does everybody else think about the title? Dragon Age Veilguard. I do have a concern that they are making it more Mass Effect-like in the combat, but again, it's not going to make or break it for me. It is what it is. I've adapted to every Dragon Age game combat-wise, so I know that I'll adapt to this one. I wasn't too happy about them taking a companion away from us. I'm still iffy on that. But I understand their reasoning for it too. So I'm not going to be like overly critical on that front either.
The thing that is so amazing about Veilguard is this is the game where we finally said out loud that Bioware's greatest strength is telling stories through characters. If you go all the way back to Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, these are games that are telling stories through characters, but there wasn't an intentionality behind that. And in this game, we're finally putting that intentionality first and foremost, putting the characters first.
So that's one of the biggest criticisms that is going around right now. Because they said that prior to Veilguard, the companions were not intentional. And I think that their words are being taken out of context. Because he said, you go all the way back to Baldur's Gate. I think it's a matter of, so this is what I'm thinking about. From my perspective, what I am seeing is, it's like in life, right? When you're young, okay, you don't really know who you are. Part of life is figuring out who you are. It is figuring out who you want to be, right? And I think that what's happening right now is BioWare is finally at a point where they're saying, they're not just saying it, but they're embracing it. Okay, this is what we're good at. This is who we are. Yes, we didn't intentionally make the characters in the past the central focus of the game, but what we've learned along the way, mostly through fans' interactions and fans' reactions to the past games, is that our biggest talent, our greatest gift, is the companions, is through the storytelling of the characters themselves. So that's where I think that's what I am seeing when they're talking about this.
Building the game around those character moments, around those characters, which is really the best way that Bioware knows how to tell stories.
And I want to say this, that does not in any way diminish the characters of the past. It doesn't diminish the companions of the past. It doesn't diminish, because intended or not, it's like when I write one of my stories. My intended thing in writing a story and writing about a character is one thing, but when someone reads it, it could come out to be a different perspective. And I think that that's the greatest thing about all art, whether it's through music, movies, TV, video games, books, art, drawings, paintings, whatever, what the artist intends for it to be and what the viewer, reader, listener takes from that are not always the same thing. And so I think that by him saying that they're intentionally doing this because this is what the feedback has been over the years from gamers, from the fans of the books and the different types of media of the Dragon Age series, this is their feedback. This is what they're seeing. And so now we're intentionally going and working towards that goal. Does that make sense? If that makes sense to people, let me know, because I don't always explain things. I don't always explain things. Exactly. Everybody will have a different interpretation of any kind of creative media. Right. Exactly. So I think that's what they're saying, what they're putting forth. Like, I don't think that it's diminishing the past characters in any sort of way. I just think that, like, point that he's making is, yes, we made all these great characters and we told all these amazing stories, but we didn't know the impact that it was going to have on the fans, on the people playing our video games. So, and I think so now they're like they're much more conscious of that. That's what I'm taking from what he said.
The most interesting villains to myself, and honestly to most people, are not just straight up, I just want to end the world. To them, they are the heroes of the story, and Solus is no exception.
Yeah.
Solus always feels that he is a tragic hero, but a hero nonetheless. So he's coming into this believing firmly that what you stopped him from doing was the right thing, that you made a mistake, but because now he's trapped, now he can't, reach out and actively affect, he needs to work with you. And that allows us to provide a lot of nuance to the relationship, because Solus sees a lot of himself in you, especially the parts of himself that he maybe doesn't like to face. So there is kind of that interesting push and pull between the two characters, Solus and the main protagonist, Rook. And you can define what that relationship means. You can continue to be suspicious and hostile towards him, or you can start to see him and find that common ground, find that connection between the two of you, and really develop a different relationship over the course of the story.
Which gives us our choices, right? That gives us our choices. We get to decide what kind of relationship we're going to have with Solus. And that is another signature of Bioware, is giving us the choice to decide how we're going to have these relationships with the different characters in the game. One of my favorite things about Bioware.
This is a good direction to take the Solus story. It allows us to hopefully give a good conclusion to all of the varied attitudes towards Solus that are going to be coming into this game. People who love Solus, people who agree with Solus, people who hate Solus, people who want to kick Solus off a building. I think that we give you the opportunity to bring that to a close, but then tell a greater story about the Veilguard and about the world as a whole.
Having worked on Inquisition, having worked on Veilguard, one of the things that we really wanted to lean into early on was Dragon Age has always been about characters, but to some degree it's almost felt like we've lucked into that. Inquisition is a story that ultimately you and the main characters you recruit at the beginning are the ones who have the biggest part to play. We wanted to tell a story this time where you literally cannot save the world without these characters. Beyond that, though, we also wanted to give them their own arcs that run parallel to the main story and really give them that kind of deep storytelling that our fans really enjoy and really thrive. So these followers or these companions don't just exist by themselves. They have relationships with each other as well. They have friendships, they have rivalries, and lean into that concept. You're not just pulling together a bunch of people who will do whatever you say. You're assembling a family, and that becomes the core of what the Veilguard is all about. It's about taking this group, this found family, and saving the world side by side with them.
So that's where I think that's another statement that was made that I think it has been criticized. I'm going to say this. I think that the criticism is a little bit more valid here, because my interpretation of Dragon Age Origins in particular, I don't think that any of the companions in any of the other games are not found family, if that makes sense. But I do see what he's coming from with you have more influence over them, like, and I'm thinking of Fenris in particular in Dragon Age 2, but I like being able to have that influence because I like being able to change his mind. I like being able to convince him that not all mages are inherently evil, right? Because then that leaves an arc for him. That leaves a character arc for him that I really love to see. I don't think that that's what he's talking about, though. I'm not sure if that's what he means. What does everybody else think? Like, what does he mean by that exactly? I think that each game, I did get attached to the characters. I did love my companions, but I don't think that he's downplaying that part of it. I think what he's trying to say, and it, and we're taking it however we take it, is that they're giving our new companions more agency over themselves. That's what I think he's saying, and that their world doesn't revolve around Rook.
Is a story told through characters, but it is a story that's going somewhere. In Origins, a lot of things were done just to do them. In Veilguard, things are done towards a goal, towards a storytelling goal, towards the future. So this is a game which takes the ball that Inquisition had, puts its own spin on it, has its own characters, takes its own direction, but continues that path forward into the future.
One of the principles we wanted to get into with Dragon Age, the Veilguard, is the world exists even when you're not around. There are things, there are, ancient conflicts, there are grudges, things that happen even when Rook, the protagonist, isn't participating in them, and you kind of come in media res in some of these. So the message of the Veilguard is you're not saving the world on your own. You need your companions, but you also need these factions, these other groups in the world. You help them, they help you. Now, something we wanted to avoid, because there's always the trope of, oh yeah, I would help you save the world, but I need you to go gather 200, wood. 200 wood, exactly. It's kind of a silly concept. So what we wanted to build is these factions that do want to help you, but have realistic challenges, problems in front of them. So narratively, you help them with their problems. They will help you with yours when the time comes. But beyond that, each faction has a follower as well as ancillary character we're calling agents who exist as these face of the faction. We're not going to get too deep.
So I would argue that Dragon Age Origins did the same thing, right? You had to recruit the Dalish, the dwarves, the Circle, right? You had to get them on board. You had to, in Dragon Age Origins in particular, you had to get the dwarves on board, the mages / Templars on board, and the Dalish. You had to. They were part of the treaties. And each one that you went to, they had their own problems that you had to help solve. So I feel like I'm in a little bit of a disagreement here that this is setting Vanguard apart from the prior games. Now instead of having ancient treaties, now we have different factions that we have to go to, and it sounds like they're gonna have their own problems that we're gonna have to help solve. So it sounds very Dragon Age Origin-esque in that way, because that's exactly what we had to do in Dragon Age Origins. But what do you guys think?
Into those right now, but we didn't want to just say, here's the wardens, go deal with the war. We wanted to have characters within that faction who are sympathetic, who you can see and who become the face of that faction. So even if there's moments where the faction as a whole may be on the outs with you, these characters are still with you. They've still got your back. It's a core of what we've done with the storytelling in this game. We wanted to make sure all the content you did felt relevant. Everything you do has a purpose and has a tie back into the critical path. Sometimes it's more explicit than others, but there is always a sense that you're moving towards the goal of stopping the Elven Gods, stopping the end of the world. And it's not just, and I love Dragon Age Inquisition, but the side content, it's not just finding the ring, someone's ring and returning to them. It's helping these people, helping these groups so they can help you when the time comes.
So when it comes to identity and iteration on the franchise, we've really moved it into a place where you have the highest of highs. It can be colorful, it can be optimistic, but also you can have the lowest of lows where it gets gritty, it gets painful, it gets quite dark. But throughout it all, there's a sense of optimism, and it creates this delightful through line through the game.
So I think that optimism that she's talking about, that's the problem that a lot of, not all of us, but some of the OG players have a problem with. It's because optimism is the opposite of dark fantasy, I guess. But she's still saying it's dark and gritty, but there's a level of optimism throughout the game, which I felt was in Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Inquisition as well. Not so much in Dragon Age Origins, but I do feel like, at least with your core group of people, we still found joy in certain things. So I don't know that there was optimism per se, but like, yeah, I can see where, yeah, that's very different. That's definitely set apart from the other games. So yeah.
This identity that I really think is something special for the franchise now and going forward.
Should we be in more of a hurry to get out of here? We don't want to look conspicuous. Just get out of here nice and casual. Find Nev Gallus and...
Well, I think it's because their interpretation and their perspective on what dark fantasy is supposed to be. I think that's the stickler, and some people are really stuck in certain ways of things being a certain way. And I mean, when you and this is another flaw of the human being, okay? We as a general species, generalizing here, not specific, generalizing, we don't like change. We don't like anything sticking outside of our perspectives. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that from a certain section of people within the fandom. So yeah.
Stop Solus.
The interesting thing about Dragon Age the Veilguard is it takes part in a world of Thedas that we've only hinted at. We've never been there before. The Grey Warden Fortress of Weishaupt.
I can't wait to see it.
The depths of Arlethan Forest, the Ravane Coast, or even the Grand Necropolis in Navarra. These are storied locations. Let's not forget about Minrathous itself. The great thing about setting the game in these storied locations is no one has ever seen them before. It is a hub and spoke based design. Your base of operations is the lighthouse. You're going to journey out from the lighthouse into an area of the Fade known as the Crossroads, which is full of mysteries, exploration, branching paths, and you'll take Alluvians to the far corners of northern Thedas. As far as the environments themselves, some of them are more heavily mission focused, which means they're full of narrative beat after narrative beat. And this is one of the constants of our design philosophy is a curated, handcrafted experience. And by creating that sense of handcrafted, narrative-based experience, we really strongly feel it allows us to tell the best stories possible. So for me personally, and I know for the team, it was important that you could see yourself in the game, and that always begins with the character creator. Who you want to be.
I want to see the character creator. I so want to see it.
A completely different character.
I want to see it so bad.
All the options, various lineages throughout the history of Dragon Age, and also the various types of identities and people that exist out in the world. I'm really proud of what we built there because it is a game where everyone belongs.
Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age 2 were doing what they could with the technology that they had. Dragon Age Inquisition did a good job of using Frostbite, respected the engine, but this game has been able to execute visually to a degree that just wasn't possible in the past. Everyone moved in exactly the same way. If you put on a suit of armor and you put it on Alistair, you looked exactly the same, standing right beside each other. Now we're able to keep the character coming through in the visuals and the motion, even as you're customizing them, which just wasn't possible in the past.
Interesting.
I must say, in an RPG where you're equipping different types of armor, where you've got different lineages.
I've heard all about the different sliders. Yeah, I've heard that they're going to be showing us the character creator. I just don't know when, and I personally cannot wait to see the character creator. That's the biggest thing I'm excited about. Well, that and the release date and the PC specs. I need to know what the PC specs are, because I need to know if I need to invest in a brand new Xbox to play it on Xbox, or if my PC is going to be able to handle it. That's what I need to know. Those are the 3 things that I need to know before the game releases. So yeah. The character creator, the release date, and the PC specs.
To create that robust experience, but it's something we absolutely wanted to support. And that comes along with a couple of new to Dragon Age features that really push the limits of what we've seen in RPG character creation before. So first of all, full body customization with pretty robust diversity in terms of body shape, body size, proportions, things of that nature. So that was a pretty big evolution for us. We've also invested tremendous effort in our strand hair technology, numerous hairstyles, because we know how much our fans care about that.
Yes, we
I'm
do.
one of them as well.
Yes,
the
we
first
do.
thing I always look for is show me the hairstyles. But the range of hairstyles really matters too. It's not just about quantity. It's making sure that we have diverse representation for all types of players. This is defining how you want to enter the world. So we took a step back and said, how are we going to incorporate things like your background in a meaningful way? How are we going to incorporate
That's where I'm
things
interested in that too.
how you want to experience the gameplay of the game? And all of those are very important factors. I'm particularly proud of integrating, we call it playstyle, but is effectively difficulty into the character creation process. So you can select a number of preset experiences that your character will adopt and step into the game with, but you can also customize that playstyle. So if you're like me and you're terrible at parrying, you can use that up a little bit. Some of the locations that we'll be visiting are bustling cities. We're also going to go to a city in Antiva called Treviso. These have a dense populace, and we knew we needed to have the tools to support a wide range of NPCs. You're not going to find NPCs that look alike in this game. Every NPC is crafted using the same tools that we're giving to our players.
Okay, so how is that going to work performance-wise, right? How is that going to work for performance-wise? Because what was the recent game that I played? Dragon's Dogma 2. In certain areas, because there were a lot of NPCs, the performance of the game went down significantly. And there was a lot of lag in certain areas of the game because there was a lot of NPCs. And that was a big deal. So that's going to be a question for me. What is the performance going to look like in those dense areas?
With the exception of some of our custom sculpted characters like the companions. So when you walk up to that market vendor in Minrathous, you can make that character. When you see the guards patrolling the street, you can make that character too. I think it's so interesting, not only as a developer to be able to use player-facing tools and technology, but then as a player to be inspired by the population around you and be able to go replicate that inside of the character creator. These are the most fully realized,
I'm loving the rain, by the way,
companions we've ever crafted, and I do believe they are our best. They're complicated, they have complicated problems. And what's interesting, as much as I adore the companions and the journeys I've been on with them in past Dragon Age titles, previously it feels like the companions are going on an adventure with me, the main character, whether it's the hero Ferelden or Hawk, you name it. But in Dragon Age the Veilguard, in many ways, the companions are so fleshed out that it feels as though I'm going on a journey with them. I'm exploring how they think and feel. I'm helping them through their problems. We're working through their unique character arcs. They feel like my dear friends, and I absolutely adore them.
So yeah, I don't think that that is also another way in which they're diminishing past characters. I know that what she just said, some people will interpret it that way, but like, I am not taking it that way. I am taking it as there's nothing wrong with the characters being more fleshed out now, to a point where you can feel independent of them and they can feel independent of you. I think that that just gives us more reason to get to know each one of them and more room to know more about them. That's how I'm taking that.
So outside of combat, what that means is they're going to have their own concerns, fears, distractions, and indeed, even their own sanctuaries, their own personal spaces. In our, I guess you could call it our base of operations this time, our player hub, the lighthouse, each of the companions has their own room. And what I love about it is it becomes a reflection of who they are. The more time you spend with them, as the game develops, as you work through their arc, their room and their personalities will evolve and flourish and become more complete as they trust you more and you understand them better. What's interesting, the companions also develop romantically. I'm not just talking about with the main character, Rook. I'm talking about with each other. There are moments in the game where two of our companions fell in love with each other, and I had to make some pretty challenging choices as it related to the quest we were on. And it broke my heart.
Okay, so what the hell does that mean? What does that mean? So, like, for example, Inquisition. In Inquisition, you have to take Dorian and Bull around with you enough for them to be flirting with each other during the banter, right? And then at some point they get together and whatnot. So what does it mean? So, like, is she saying, like, for example, in Inquisition, if you the choice that you make as the Inquisitor to tell the Bull to let go of his chargers and choose the Canary over his chargers, right? Then he becomes a full permanent member of the Qun, and then therefore by the time we get to Trespasser, he's betrayed us, not just us, but he's betrayed Dorian as well, right? Is that the kind of choice we're talking about, or are we talking about a choice where one of them dies? Because aren't we supposed to have that risk? Isn't that supposed to be the risk that we're faced with in this game? Because, like, very much like Mass Effect 2, companions can die by the end of the game, depending on your choices. I honestly don't know what to think about that. I will be straight up honest with you. I don't know what to think about that. I don't know whether to be worried, whether to be excited, whether to... Like, I feel like I'm definitely going into the game gonna be a lot more cautious and conscious of the decisions that I make. Because I still remember my first playthrough of Mass Effect 1. I had no idea. See, my ex-husband, he told me to play Mass Effect 1. I was bored. I got a whole story behind that. But he did not tell me anything because, you know, I don't like to have spoilers. But he didn't tell me certain things. And one of the things that he did not tell me was, by the way, by the time you get to Vermeer, you need to have your Paragon or Renegade up high enough to save Rex. And I did not have that shit high enough at all. I chose mostly the middle dialogue. I didn't even think about Paragon or Renegade in my first playthrough. And Ashley freaking snipes Rex. That was horrible. It was an experience. Let's just put it that way. And I don't really want to go through that again. So maybe we're going to be doing a lot of save scumming. We'll see. We will see.
It absolutely did. So
I started that playthrough all over. I started it over.
And you're returning to the lighthouse and getting to know them.
I was so mad at Ashley.
Decisions and conversations and things you learn about them, it endears them to you in a way that I honestly haven't experienced before. And sometimes that fills me with joy, and sometimes it... Or, actually, because Mass Effect 1 had both. It had, if you don't have your Paragon or Renegade up high enough, Rex dies, right? But there's the canon where in that same area in Vermeer, you actually have to make a choice between Kaidan and Ashley. So what is she saying? Is she saying like an example being that, like, it's Kaidan and Ashley falling in love with each other, and then you have to choose one of them
to die? Wow. But, like, obviously in Veilguard, so, like, I have no idea. I have no idea, like, Harding and Tosh falling in love, and then you gotta choose between. Is that what we're talking about? That I'm having flashbacks of my very first Mass Effect playthrough. This is something. This is definitely something.
I think this is a game that tries to give the player as much agency as we can, and then reflecting it back on you. Choice and consequence can be really hard to show, but this is a game about agency, about giving you options, and whether that be in how you play or approach combat, whether that be in how you make your character, whether that be in how you decide who you're going to romance.
So the challenge that's always before us is how do we appeal to each of those sensibilities? The person that's there for the story, the person that is there to min-max their character and do the most damage, the person who really wants to lean into tactical versus the player who really wants to lean into action and fluidity. There are a couple of different axes to our progression systems and how your character will develop over time. There is the gear that you'll find along the way, the things you'll equip. There are the progression systems there within.
Is the gear upgrading? Listen, is the gear gonna look good? Now, I heard that they're gonna have the transmog thing. So, like, if you find a cute looking armor, like, I'm all about being cute and kicking ass. There's no reason that I can't be a badass and still look hot, okay? That's just my... That's my thing when I'm playing these types of games. I want to look good and kick ass. And, so, like, the transmog is going to give us the opportunity that if we find an armor that we really, really like, we can keep wearing it, but we can upgrade it with the other less attractive armor. So that's a positive.
The gear, you're enchanting it. That extends to your companions, by the way. There is also the robust skill tree system that we have. This allows you to take any of our 3 classes, the warrior, the rogue, or the mage, specialize them. Each class has 3 different highly distinct specializations, but a skill tree that connects them all together that is easy to use, but also pretty boundless in terms of the gameplay options and styles of character build you can create.
So I know that a lot of people don't like the Pride Demon, the design of the Pride Demon, and I get it. I get it. I've also seen I think it's supposed to be the ogre. I'm not positive that it's the ogre. If that is the ogre, what they showed in another still late at another point, I can't remember where, but it is a little jarring because, you know, the ogre's supposed to look a certain way, but, like, at the same time, again, is it make or break for me? No, it's not. I personally think the design of the Pride Demon looks really cool, but I'm a fan of purple. I love purple. It's my favorite color, so I'm down with it, but I also understand why other people don't like the design.
Stop this demon quickly. The gameplay in the franchise has been an evolution. Every single entry reimagines what combat is like.
But it does keep that thread that's always been there. When you go from Dragon Age Origins with very tactical combat to Dragon Age 2, which still had pause and play, to Dragon Age Inquisition, again with some tactics, pause and play, but moving towards more action-oriented aspects. In this game, you have focus on Rook, on your character, but still having that control coming into your combat experience from the other people in your party.
Our goal was to make sure we had a system that allowed players to feel like they actually were able to step into the world of Thetis. They're not a player observing from afar. They are inside of this world. The combat system needs to support that. So that starts with our foundation, which is a real-time combat system. But what I will say is,
I don't think I ever felt like I wasn't a part of the world. So I'm not entirely sure what she means by that. But I mean, that's one of those things where we're just gonna have to wait for the game to come out and see for ourselves.
that while it provides a level of accessibility and connection, and indeed weight, one of my favorite things is that every attack, every swing of the sword, when you connect, you absolutely feel it. But that is just the baseline. That allows us to get that level of immersion, that I'm actually in this world, I'm a part of it. But again, the abilities, the strategy, linking my companions' abilities together to perform devastating combos, that is really where the depth and the complexity comes into play. Companions as realized characters. We have to take that premise when we talk about how they show up in combat. These are their own people. They have their own behaviors, they have their own autonomy on the battlefield. They'll pick their own targets. As their plots progress, they'll learn how to use their abilities more competently, and it really feels like you're fighting alongside these realized characters in battle. So I love that. I love the believability of it. It feels like we're all in it together. But then when it comes time for the strategy and the progression, I might add, that's where really a sense of teamwork comes into play. As the leader of this party as Rook, when I open the ability wheel, I almost feel like we're huddling up, coming up with a game plan together. I see all the abilities that Harding has, and I see everything that Balara is capable of. And sometimes I'm using their abilities synergistically. Maybe I'm slowing time with Balara so that I can unleash devastating attacks with Harding, knocking down the enemy, and then...
So that is going to be interesting for me as a player, because in all of the Dragon Age games, unless I'm on a harder difficulty, I don't pay attention to what my companions are doing. When we're fighting, I just concentrate on me. But as you guys can see in Dragon Age Origins, because I'm playing on Nightmare, I do have to be vigilant about what they're doing because they don't like to drink their potions. Even though I have their tactics set up, thanks to Commander Shepard helping me out setting up their tactics with stuff. Yeah, I still have to be on top of them for that. So, in Veilguard, we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes. I won't be playing on a hard difficulty on my first playthrough, obviously. I like to play in story mode if there's the option for story mode, because I just like to get to know the game and get to know the story. That's how my first playthrough is going to go. But yeah, that's interesting.
And me as Rook, I'm rushing in and capitalizing on this setup they've created for me. It is a game about creating this organic sense of teamwork. Now, there are more explicit synergies as well. We very much have intentional combos where your companions can play off of each other. You can queue up abilities between them, and each of those abilities will go off and have their effect, but it results in this massive detonation where you get enhanced effects, debuff the entire battlefield, all because of planning and teamwork. What makes it really cool is you can introduce Rook into that equation as well. One of my favorite things to do is upgrade some of Harding's abilities, so she will autonomously use some of these abilities that normally I'd have to instruct her to do, and she'll actually set my character up to execute a combo that again has that detonation effect. And what's been surprising, I think, for me, is that it's really changed the way I approach the game. I'm very much the pause and play, tactical, strategic RPG player. But what I found is that I entered into kind of a hybrid play style the more familiar I got with this game that we've created, where I'm leaning into the fluid, responsive gameplay. I'm using my abilities of Rook, our main character, in real time, but then I am pausing the action when I want to leverage my companions and string together complex combos or synergies that I've identified on my own. It gives you that moment to think and respond in a way that is truly delightful.
I mean, honestly, I just want to say I am incredibly proud of this project. I'm incredibly proud of this team, and I think the thing I'm most excited about when people start playing this game, people start seeing more about this game, is every little piece, every little thing in this game is because somebody cared. Somebody cared enough to put it in, and you can see that there's a saying that the game reflects the team. I think this one reflects the team that made it in the best possible way.
I'm really excited about this game. It's really been really gratifying to come back onto the team and see everything that they've accomplished in the last couple of years. The game's coming together great. It's really fun, and I'm really looking forward to people getting their hands on it in a little while.
That is all I wanted to really talk about with you guys today. I am interested to know what everyone else thinks. For those who want to post their comments, please be respectful. That's it for me, guys. Thank y'all. And I hope y'all have a great rest of your day.